He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
All right, this is the Alex Marlow Show. We are recording on a rainy day here in Los Angeles, and I will tell you that, do you guys like the rain? Master Marlow is a huge rain fan. He's got an umbrella. Nothing thrills him more than to be able to use the umbrella. I always get nervous when it rains because that cuts into my grilling time. So yesterday, though, I did whip out the Courier infrared grill, and I made some hamburgers. They were unbelievable. It's the first time I've done the burgers. I've done the steaks, I've done the chickens. But since the good people at besthotgrill.com sent me my Courier infrared grill, I had not tried the burgers. I got a great burger recipe. I got the onions in the caramelization zone, and I do the jalapenos. So that's it. That's the move. And I don't overdo it on the cheese. Always cheddar. I don't like American. I don't understand it when you guys go for the American. A lot of people do. A lot of smart people do. I don't get it. I'm a cheddar guy through and through. And it was the first time I'd done the burgers on the Courier infrared grill, and it was absolutely perfect. So I've got an issue. I don't like a well-done burger, but I also don't like to make my family sick. So I end up erring on the side of the overdone burger sometimes at home. And I try to make up for it with, better toppings, better flavors, better seasoning. But I was able to nail it, completely nailed it. Perfect medium in the middle, nice sear on the outside. It's all because I got the hottest grill in the market. Besthotgrill.com, Courier infrared grills. I will not be grilling tonight. It's not going to happen. It's very wet, very rainy out here, but I'm glad I got it in yesterday. It is good to do nice things for yourself. This is important. We had a big case of the Mondays going on yesterday, which is why the grilling was important. Mrs. Dr. Marlow was upset. I had a tough day. It wasn't that tough. It was fine. It was just long. It's the real thing, a case of the Mondays. Seasonal depression, but only weekly. So got the Courier grill. But one other thing you can do for your health as well is you go to Juven. Juven, if you want to stay active, strong, independent for years to come, you need to start paying attention to your bone and joint health today. I've started doing this and I'm already feeling the benefits. So you don't wait until it's too late. So you got to do a free 60-second bone and joint health risk assessment. That's going to show you exactly where you stand. Juvent.com/Marlow to get it. Quick real-time insights into your mobility and your joint health. And you can do this all from the comfort of your own home. It's only 60 seconds. Think of it like a wake-up call. If you're already dealing with aches, stiffness, joint discomfort, your body's giving you warning signs. I had them. That's why I signed up with them. Don't ignore them. Take a 1 minute. It takes 1 minute, and then you'll have total control over your health. Go to Juvent.com. This JUVENT.com/Marlow and take the quiz and get your results instantly. Your future self will thank you, particularly if you're getting older. But if you're young, you start feeling those aches and pains. You have no idea how much they can help you. Juvent.com/Marlow. And you can do that. All right. We got a couple of massive news items today. We are going to talk to Congressman Scott Perry momentarily about the CR. That's the continuing resolution that's out there. Let me give you some quick background on what's going on. A big debate on Capitol Hill. It will have advanced a little bit between the time we're recording and when the show airs. But everything we've got is going to be relevant still, because even if it passes today, in between the time that we're recording and when the show goes live, it's got to go to the Senate. So we got days of drama ahead. We're trying to fund the government here, and the continuing resolution is going to last through the end of the fiscal year, which is 204 days. And you guys know me. If you've been with me, I like 12 appropriation bills. That's what I like. That's how I think things should be funded. But also, I'm a realist. I'm a pragmatist when we're in power. When you're in the primary season, when you're out of power, you get to let those idealist flags fly. And I love all that. And I love when I have real idealists on my staff. I manage both types of people. I manage people who are just practical, want to get stuff done. I manage people who are those real diehards who just simply want to have that ideological purity. I love both types of people. The movement, the conservative movement, needs both types of people. But now, if you really break this thing down, this is one of the best looking CRs I've ever seen for a number of reasons. Because first of all, it provides additional funding for Tom Homan and deportations. Number one mandate Trump had was we're doing deportations, we're clean up immigration, we're funding ICE, all that stuff. All of that's in there. The next thing, it allows DOJ to operate. If the government shuts down a few days, DOJ shuts down as well. So those are pretty compelling. And the other thing here is this has actual cuts in it. We've never seen a CR with actual cuts. It actually cuts the government. This one does. Now, is it enough? Is it going to fix all of our problems? Is it going to fix the fact that we have a debt that is so out of control multiple times, whatever our intake is into the Treasury? It's not going to fix all that all at once, but we get massive portions of Trump's agenda funded, paid for, at least for the next 7 months or so, while we're able to start maybe resetting things so we can go back to fiscal responsibility in a pure sense, get those 12 appropriation bills going. So almost all the Republicans are on board. Thomas Massie is not. Rand Paul is not. It's really interesting. Maybe I'm hypocritical on this. I always have loved Rand Paul's purity, and it feels like it's very genuine. It comes from, if you think about Ron Paul, and I've got to know Rand Paul a little bit. I've interviewed him a number of times, and I do honestly feel like he's not power mad. He's not power hungry. He's one of those few people who are in the Senate because he legitimately thinks he's the best guy to be in the Senate and not just out of personal aggrandizement, which I always find very admirable. But we might get some Democrats on the Senate side who are likely to support. So we'll see how that goes. Thomas Massie is the only outright no vote in the House. And a lot of you guys love Massie. He does strike me as a grandstander. I like a lot of what he has to say. He says a lot of smart stuff on social media, but he also does things that do feel very thirsty to me, meaning that I'm getting attention. And it's not really about the principle as much as it's about I've got a window to make myself feel unique and special. So I'm not saying he's a bad congressman. I'm not saying he isn't a super interesting American. All those things are true. I'm not saying we wouldn't have an unbelievably interesting conversation if he ever wanted to come on the show, and we'll extend an invite at some point. But I just don't get it here. We voted for Trump. This is Trump's agenda, and he's the only one right now who's saying not into it because of some principle. But again, if you support this principle that we cannot have CRs, and I loosely like that we cannot have CRs, I very much like that we cannot. I don't like omnibus bills, which is we could have an omnibus bill too here, which would have been even worse. I like the idea of funding things at a appropriations level, meaning 12 times a year, we get different bills. I like all that stuff. But also, if we hold out for that now, we're going to shut down the government, which I don't know who gets blamed for that. Traditionally, it's been Republicans. This time, I don't know because the press is not credible anymore with the public, but we don't know. And it also means that Homan's work stops, Doge's work stops, and I'm just not into it. Not right now. So if the CR passes, Elon continues his work. Russ Votes can be able to package Elon's findings with his at the OMB. Trump is going to have the opportunity, this is really big, to cut below appropriated levels through impoundment. Democrats are already wringing their hands about this. We were playing a Jasmine Crockett clip. I don't think I'm going to get to it because I want to keep the show kind of tight today. But we had a big Crockett rocket. We were thinking of playing for you, where she was on CNN explaining how she's upset about impoundment, which means Trump will be able to shut down some of the spending. So he'll be able to, which could be a compelling way to actually keep spending down. So Trump's agenda could go through and he could end up spending less than what's appropriated on other elements of the agenda. And this really is offensive to Democrats in the Congress. So they find that to be deeply offensive as well as the Homan stuff. But it does not include any provisions to ensure Trump doesn't spend beneath appropriated spending. That's the big takeaway here, which is really, really interesting beyond the Doge and the border stuff. So Scott Perry's take is coming up, so hang tight for that. Other big news item today is we got tariffs. We're in a big tariff mode right now. A lot of back and forth with Canada. We woke up this morning to a lot of drama where Canada has announced that they are going to crack down on Americans' energy supply. So they want to cut us off from Canadian electricity. So first of all, why do we need Canadian electricity? Well, Canada's got this big plant in Ontario that operates it's a hydroelectric facility. So the Greens love this. So we would rather buy our electricity from Canada because they've got this great hydroelectric facility. Then they can sell us the electricity rather than produce our own because we can't necessarily produce it in the quantity we need at quite the green efficient level as they're doing in Ontario. That's given them leverage over us, but it's noteworthy what that represents, that Canada has one over on us. They've got a lot of leverage on us, and we're somewhat dependent on them. Ford, what's Ford? I always think it's Doug Ford. It was Doug Ford's brother. There's two Fords. Doug Ford was the crazy guy who died. Or is this Doug Ford I'm thinking of? It is Doug Ford. Okay, so I'm thinking of Doug Ford. Who's his brother? I gotta come up with Rob Ford? No. What is it? What is it? Yeah, Rob Ford. Was he the one who died? Yeah, he was the wild one and done. So Doug Ford is a Canadian member of parliament. Rob Ford, one of the most wild figures we ever covered. He died about 10 years ago. And he was just always seemed like he was on drugs. He was a mayor of Toronto, among other things. Anyway, Ford family, an institution in Canada. And Doug Ford represents Ontario. Here's him talking about withholding electricity from you guys. Check this out.
On the electricity. Stay tuned.
So what does that look like? What are the potential responses?
Well, we'll see. I'll talk to the team and we'll make an appropriate response to President Trump. Again, I stress, this is not the American people. The Canadians know it. And if we go into a recession, it's self-made by one person. It's called President Trump's recession, which shouldn't be this way. We should be booming both countries right now.
So he thinks we're in a media environment where if there is any sort of economic setback, we're just going to blame Trump, and Trump is going to get all the blame. So Canada says we're cutting off America from this electricity. So Trump goes right back at him and says now it's a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. And he warns that more is coming. So it's just noteworthy that if you want to negotiate with Trump, he's playing hardball. He never has to run for anything again. He knows he's at his most highest approval rating ever. And he's now looking at America at a 100-year timeline. He's not looking past the next time the stock market closes. He's not looking just at the next jobs report. By the way, we got a lot of data in the last couple of days. Job openings are stable. Quit rates are high. So when quit rates are up, it shows that people are confident in the economy. They're confident enough to quit their job and think they're going to get a new and better job. So Canada threatens to cut us off. They're no longer operating on a friendly plane here with us. And this proves a very important point, is that we are vulnerable to Canada in this regard, and that's not good for us. And that's why tariffs need to be used and need to be wielded. Because if they're willing to cut us off, where do they draw the line? Where are they going to put their foot down in the future and say, we are not going to tolerate America's behavior? What if we don't want to join them in a war? What if we want to fight a war that they don't want to fight? There's so many different things. What if they did have some sort of demand that we don't want to go along with? And they can threaten us and say that, well, we're just going to cut off your electricity if you don't go along with us. So we are. So if we're dependent also on Canadian steel, they can hold us hostage for that as well. So it's important that we fight back in a major way, and we got to build our own steel. We got to get our own electricity, and we got to be able to wield tariffs to bring these other nations to heel. And it's noteworthy how Canada is getting much more nationalistic and much more aggressive. This is going to be championed by the American left, by liberals in the media. But when America operates as America first, we're seen as the bad guys. When it's Ukraine first, Ukraine's good. When it's Canada first, Canada's good. But when it's America first, then all of a sudden we're fascists and Nazis or whatever. So just note that that's what's going on. And it's good for Trump for making an aggressive move on this. And if Canada trying to play hardball with us, which is short-term interesting, but I'm much more interested in the moment, the long-term implications, that if Canada is willing to play this tough, of course, we have a lot of leverage to play back at them. But note that does not leave us on stable ground. Trump is trying to fortify our country, against China, which is a foothold in China. I mean, in Canada, trying to do the same with Greenland. By the way, Greenland is going to the polls, and and of course, it's the whether or not they're having an election now. It's all dominated by Trump. All the language there, all the commentary. We've got a story on this at Breitbart.com from Oliver Lane in our London bureau. So everyone should check that out as well. I give more detail for you on a less action-packed show. But this is how Trump is operating. He's operating in a way where he's trying to fortify America from threats, not just physical threats, but also economic threats. And he doesn't like when other countries have the upper hand on us. He doesn't want it. And he's going to wield what he can to make sure we're in a favorable position. So that's what's happening now. So John Carney phrased it to me as Canada wants a veto on U.S. policy. And to that, Trump responded by saying, well, the tariff just got 10 feet higher or 10% higher or 25% higher, whatever it is. You get the point. If you're going to play hardball with us, we'll play hardball right back. That should be very welcome. All right, I got great news. For everyone. Egg prices are coming down, and check this out. Egg prices are now below when Trump took office. So ye of little faith, all of you who thought the Democrats' egg prices talking point was so important. Well, turned out we were right at Breitbart News that it was going to eventually stabilize. Here's what happened, is that Joe Biden slaughtered all these chickens due to bird flu. And it's suspect policy, but that was his choice. That's what he did. And so it takes a while to regenerate chickens and get them to the place where they can lay eggs, and we can get the eggs, and then we can have a stable egg prices. So since Trump took office, now the egg prices have plummeted through the floor, and now we're below where they were when Trump took office. And a lot of it was all those chickens that we killed. Well, now we got new chickens, and they're making eggs, and everything's going to be okay. So the bird flu was the major driver of that. It wasn't Trump's horrible economic policies. And this is where, if you're getting your news from the establishment media, you would never learn that. You've had to read a Breitbart or listen to a show like this one to figure out that the problem was bird flu. It was not Trump, and Trump being a bad orange man. So just keep a note of that, and we try to bring you the best and the most important information here on the Alex Marlow Show and at Breitbart News. And we'll keep an eye on egg prices. Look, they might go back up again. Who knows? But as of now, they're heading down and below where they were when Trump took office. All right, another good piece of data. Panama records a 99% drop in U.S.-bound migration through the Darian Gap. It's just people are getting the picture. It's plummeting. They do not come here. The message has been sent. This is so productive because people know that once they get here, they're not going to be allowed to stay. They're not just going to be welcomed with open arms. We are not here to have unlimited immigration from now on. That's not the point. That's not what America's all about. And we're sending a clear signal to people that we are going to be evaluating the people who are here. And if you are not a participant who's contributing to our country in a productive way, then you're not going to be allowed to stay. You're not going to have an unlimited ability to not only come here, but then to bring your family members through chain migration. All that's going away under Trump's America. Department of Education says that 60 universities are under investigation for anti-Semitic discrimination and harassment. I'm all for this. There's a lot of people are mixed on this because they feel like it's like a cracking down on free speech thing. But what we're witnessing is all these people who are here on green cards and stuff and are pro-Hamas. We've got a moral imperative in this country to not to beat the terrorists, and they want to destroy our way of life. They want to destroy Western civilization. And if they're going to keep indulging this stuff and continue to get public funds, that to me is perfectly fine to crack down on. I'm pro-free speech, but if we're talking about people who want to destroy us and are openly talking about destroying us, and then we're funding the universities that allow for this speech to be rampant, to dominate the discussion, that to me feels like a line that's crossed. And if you disagree, email me, aloha@alexmarlow.com. But I just don't know why automatic federal funds, and for that matter, automatic green cards, is that there's a student from Colombia who's been in the news a lot because looks like Trump's going to deport him because he's anti-Semitic stuff. And he's on a green card. A green card doesn't mean you get to stay here forever. And if you're not being productive, if you're talking about destroying our allies, Western civilization, and that's how you're using your freedom that we're allowing you to be here as a guest, then I'm fine with it. I really am. I'm pro free speech, but pro government funded free speech to advocate for the destruction of our country feels a little off to me. Just me, but maybe that's just my opinion. But I think it's a good opinion. And if you differ, then I welcome any feedback. Drag queens have surrounded the Kennedy Center in protest of Trump's takeover. I love this stuff. We've got some clips and some video and some images at Breitbart.com. I think it's all great. It just reminds you of how unlikable these people are. They just want to impose their the trannies on all of us. That's what they want to do. This is their peak free expression, is to have men dress as women. To dress in flamboyant, silvery and glittery and rainbowy. It's just not that great. It's not that impressive. It's designed to get negative attention, and it's not really designed to do anything productive or artistic at this point. All it is trolling, and I don't think it's popular anymore. I think it may have had a moment. I think that moment is long since passed, and I am all for them putting themselves on full display, because if they do put themselves on full display, then I think people will get to see exactly how unpopular their positions really are. They're catering to a fringe, and then they're demanding to have some sort of special protection from the government. So great. I'm glad they're out there. And I'll tell you, we have a big interview, or we'll probably air this tomorrow, that I already have in the can, with a activist who's infiltrated a lot of the left-wing grassroots, someone named Jessica Bowman, who Jessica Bowman, forgive me. who we've covered quite a bit at Breitbart News. And she's tracking the left-wing grassroots. They're really lost. It's really very meek. A lot of it's AstroTurf. It's not as well funded as it was. It is not as many people who actually want to participate. So you get the drag queens out there at the Kennedy Center protesting Trump. There's not that many of them. It just is a bad look. And I think that moment's passed, and I'm happy that it's passed because now we can get back to less chaotic, more sane America. All right, more good news coming out of taking the chainsaw to the bureaucracy wing of the Trump agenda at the moment. NASA is slashing DEI jobs, a senior climate advisor, as it refocuses its mission on space. Do you guys remember when Charles Bolden, who was Obama's NASA administrator, who said that his main task, his number one priority, was improving relations with the Muslim world? That's how lost we've gotten with some of these bureaucratic agencies. It's been that way for a while. And so a lot of this is just institutionalized. It's rot. And we got to go chainsaw it out. No scalpel. Got to go with the chainsaw, and then we'll give our apologies afterwards. We hire back some good people. But getting all the woke out of NASA, that sounds very productive. We just can't afford it. We can't when we've got a $30 trillion deficit. Debt, and we're running a budget deficit still. We've got to cut. Yesterday at the beginning of the show, I talked a bit about the Courier Newsroom. You guys recall that one of those Laurene Powell jobs joints that tries to funnel fake news, Democrat talking points into the media. I was checking out our stats on Facebook yesterday, and the Courier Newsroom put out a story about how the U.S. was added to the global human rights watch list over declining civil liberties under Trump, according to some group called Civicus, which I've never heard of. So this story on Instagram from the Courier Newsroom has got 200,000 likes. So that doesn't just mean views. It means 200,000 people have actually liked this story. So at least that many have engaged with this content. I have no idea what Civicus is. U.S. is not seeing declining civil liberties under Trump. We lost huge levels of civil liberties under Obama. If you think about and Biden, think about how Biden targeted his political opponents with the Department of Justice. Think about how we had these extended jail sentences without speedy trials for the J6 people. So much discrimination under Obama over the IRS of his political opponents. So what's Trump doing? Trump's not doing any of that stuff. What has Trump done at all? There's just nothing relative to whatever they're claiming. So this is just a left-wing group is trying to create a headline to create momentum. And this is what this group, Courier Newsroom, funded by Laurene Powell Jobs and run by this Tara McGowan woman who is now in an affair allegedly with Senator Chris Murphy. They're trying to get this fake news into the bloodstream of America's culture. So that's what they do. And we expose them all at Breitbart News. And all that was in yesterday's show. And then lo and behold, there they are at the top of trending on Zuckerberg's Meta platform this morning. All right. Last news story I want to introduce. John Nolte writes for us at Breitbart News that Disney's Snow White premiere is going to be shielded. The goal is to shield Rachel Zegler, their star, from the media. They're trying to keep her out of the media because she says too many dumb things. I cannot abide by this. I need my Zegler content. This is the woman who said that Snow White was too patriarchal, the original one, and she needs the new Snow White to be a girl boss. Got to have her out there. I've got to have my Rachel Zegler content. If I don't get it, I'm going to be so disappointed. So, all right. I want to catch you guys up before we throw it to Congressman Perry on what the conversation has been like when it comes to the continuing resolution that's going on, the funding of the government, and give you a sense of some of this. Here's Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Here's his take.
Extraordinary members who are behind us and participating this morning. I think the leaders stated it well, and others have said it well this morning. This is a moment of great change in Washington. It's also a moment of clarity and real contrast. The contrast was on display last week on the House floor. It was a shameful display by the Democrats. They are flailing, as is noted. They have no leader, no vision, no plan, no platform they can run on because that was repudiated in the election. And they're in a panic mode right now. And so you see them lashing out. You see increasing profanity. There are many stories, many of you have written about this new track they've taken, the new strategy where they just scream and shout and curse at everyone. I don't think that's going to be very productive either.
Yeah, I've been making that observation quite a bit on the show. about how a lot of what they're doing now is they're acting as though you have a license to swear in public all the time, which you could do it. Some people pull it off. I'm not anti-swearing, but it's generally inarticulate. It's generally for people who don't have the mental faculty to find the right words that are not offensive to people. So occasionally, if you know the rules, then you can break them. But they're just wildly swearing all the time. I'm playing this quite a bit on the show. I think it's a bad look for them. And I like that Johnson pointed out. So that's why I wanted to highlight that. Here's Maxwell Frost, one of the guys who's prone for outbursts. And he is the only Gen Z, or the youngest member of the Congress, I think. First Gen Z member of the Congress. Radical guy, deeply tied in with all these left-wing groups that are organizing these protests. And he's one of their mouthpiece. So the mouthpiece of the donor class of the far left radicals. Here's him on, I think this is the House floor, talking some nonsense. Let me break this down for you.
I think it's interesting because anytime my colleagues want to defend horrible moves by the Trump administration, whether trying to cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, they keep saying, the people have spoken, without realizing that the people are speaking. That's why they continue to cancel their town halls, because they don't want to hear what the people are saying right now.
Well, the town halls that they're getting canceled, it's because they're all getting overrun by AstroTurf activists who are paid to be there. And they're being paid by some of these NGOs, like the Stacey Abrams NGO, I'm sure. And all these left-wing billionaires, the George Soroses, the Reid Hoffmans of the world, the exact same people who fund Maxwell Frost. So it's all connected, and some people just have had enough of it. It's not productive.
Costs are at an all-time high. I came down here to tell people that if you're struggling to afford food, you can't pay your rent, the medical bills are stacking up, this bill will make your life worse. Why?
So he doesn't give any specifics. He just says it's going to make your life worse. And he acts as though Joe Biden wasn't president for the last 4 years beforehand.
To give tax cuts to billionaires and big corporations. This bill sets up major cuts to Medicaid, which 60,000 children in my district rely on for health care.
You know, his language, it sets up major cuts to Medicaid. There are no cuts to Medicaid in this. There's none. So there's just nothing, no cuts to it. But he says it sets up cuts. So also that this is going to pave the way for tax cuts. There's no tax cuts. We're going to get to tax cuts. We're going to get our tax cuts. They're happening. But this is not it.
Cuts to Medicare, steals from veterans, ripping away benefits, steals from working people and families, gives even more unchecked power to President Elon Musk.
I think the stealing language is also noteworthy because if you're not already a committed leftist, wouldn't that be a red flag for you that maybe this guy is BSing you? Because they're not stealing. It's maybe some of the benefits are getting restructured. And I think the veterans need to be taken care of. I think that's one of the most primary functions of our government. Make sure the veterans are in good shape. We're not stealing from veterans. We're not cutting Social Security. We're not doing tax cuts. All he's saying is things to fearmonger. He's not saying anything that's actually in the CR. What he's upset about is that Trump can cut spending with his impoundment, that he's going to enforce immigration laws, and DOJ is going to continue to do its work. That's what the Democrats are upset about. They're not upset about cuts to Medicaid because those aren't in here. They're not upset about tax cuts because they're not in here.
And DOJ. And recently Musk said that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. So every vote in favor of this bill endorses those words. You vote for this, go to your constituents and be loud and proud. Tell them that the program that they've paid into and worked on their entire life so they can retire with dignity is a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, so Musk saying Social Security is a Ponzi scheme is kind of true, right? I don't think it's politically smart to cut Social Security, but essentially the Social Security cannot pay for itself. And so we extract the money from people and then we've got to pay them out based out of what? Is Social Security solvent? I'll look into this. I'll ask Carney about this, but I don't think it is. So it is sort of a Ponzi scheme in that if everyone just tried to get out at the same time, everyone wanted all their Social Security benefits now, we couldn't pay for it. So how does that differ really from a Ponzi scheme? I guess because we would just, I guess, take money from other parts of the Treasury that's not Social Security related if we had to. But it's an interesting exercise in the theoretical sense. Is Social Security a Ponzi scheme? And to think through it, pretty compelling. All right, this is Congressman Burchett, who has been, or Burchett, I don't know how to pronounce. I'm a reader, so sometimes I get the pronunciation wrong. But he's been doing great work. We've had some exclusives with him at Breitbart. He was on CNN putting Caitlin Collins in her place on the CR. I thought this was worth playing, so check this.
I counted, and you have voted against at least 38 different federal budget resolutions in your time on the Hill. Why would you vote yes now?
There's actual cuts in there the first time.
It has nothing to do with the fact that if you vote no, it could shut the government down?
I voted to we've shut the government down multiple times.
But the margin is smaller this time. And if, right now there's one hard no vote, Thomas Massie. I don't know of any definite no's. And we see people go from hard no to yes, sometimes pretty quickly.
Very quick.
So why would you vote yes this time if typically you vote against something like this? Because
this is the first time since I've been in Congress that we've decreased the size of government, literally. And if you add interest in, it's even more. Inflation in, it's even more. But it's several billion. I think it's around $20 or $30 billion, but it's a start.
So it doesn't bother you that essentially what you would be voting for, though, are spending levels that were agreed to by President Biden and
Nancy Pelosi,
Chuck Schumer.
I don't like that one bit, but it is a reduction. And to shut the government down, I think just being politically, the Democrats would talk. They would. This shows the game of politics. The Democrats before, when we were shutting the government down, this is the worst thing that ever happened. It's the Republicans' fault. But now they're going to shut it down. They're not going to vote for the CR, which is almost at the same levels as they passed under Schumer and Pelosi. And now that it's on us, it's like, this is the worst thing in the world. And it's just a game back and forth. That's all it is.
We're entering a new era where it feels like there's more people who are surfacing on TV news or who are on the right who are just calmly explaining what's going on. And it's very welcome. It's very nice to see. Scott Jennings has that role on CNN. Who was I playing the other day who was just calmly, politely explaining? I'll think of it. But there was someone I was playing the other day who was just doing a very nice job just explaining what we believe in. Yeah, it's not perfect. Spending's still too high, but we've never cut spending before. And there's a lot of stuff in here we like. So we're going to be cool with it. Scott Perry was talking about how he's concerned, or not he's concerned, but some of his colleagues are concerned that all their pork is gone. So they cut out a lot of BS in this bill. So that's great. All right, I'm content to leave it there. We'll take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with Congressman Scott Perry, who's going to break down his continuing resolution. It's got Washington abuzz. All right, so the stock market just came off its worst week in 6 months. Dollar's diving. Inflation's still with us. But I'll tell you, there's never been a better time to check out gold and silver. Gold's up over 40% since last January, about 11% this year. Silver is doing just as well. I think silver could do even better because of booming demand from various industries with the new Trump era policies. Gold was at $2,900 an ounce when I checked this morning. Goldman Sachs thinks it could hit $3,300 by the end of the year. Silver, again, could climb even faster. That's why I think it's a great time to get invested in gold, silver, precious metals with my friends at Priority Gold. They pointed out to me that you can get a IRA or 401k with physical gold and silver tax and penalty free. That's a total no-brainer. So they've got a free webinar right now. If you go to PriorityGold.com, they've got their wealth preservation guide for free for you. Just head over there, PriorityGold.com. They will help you customize your strategy with forecasts, analysis, Q&As, They will help you shield your retirement from all this chaos. So don't wait. Go to PriorityGold.com, or you can text FREEDOM to 24999. Get in touch with them. That's FREEDOM to 24999. That's simple. Or go to PriorityGold.com, and they will get you all set up so you can strengthen your portfolio through all this chaos. All right, big debate in Washington today. House conservatives are largely supporting a rule to bring the continuing resolution, the CR, to the floor that's going to fund a lot of stuff. Democrats not happy with it because it's got a lot of additional funding for Tom Homan, deportations, and other things that I assume most of them won't vote for. Who knows? Maybe we could pick off a couple. But the question is whether or not we can keep the entire Republican caucus together. A lot of buzz online of Thomas Massie saying that he's not going to support it. This is not shocking from my vantage point. But what is pretty interesting is that a lot of people who have been pretty consistent against omnibus bills, against CRs in the past, when they've had a lot of bloat and a lot of additional debt added to it, a lot of them are on board with this. And that's kind of where I find myself. And those of you who've been with me for a long time, you know that I absolutely detest funding the entire government all at once. I think it's a recipe for disaster. But I really do see this time as a necessary evil. But with me to talk about is someone who I think we're going to find is on the same page, Congressman Scott Perry from Pennsylvania. Congressman, it's great to be with you. Thank you for joining me on the Alex Marlow Show. I want to walk through the whole arc of this, but let's just start with what is the key debate as you see it on the CR? What are the various factions that are kind of duking it out at the moment?
Well, the various factions, of course, we got the Democrats and the Republicans, right? Republicans, as a whole, don't want to have Democrats weigh into this thing because, we know what the price is, right? I'll just tell you what the price is. They say their price for voting for any CR is that we defund everything that has to do with DOGE. We also make sure that the president he can't fire anybody. He has to rehire and reinstate everybody that's been let go for one reason or another, and he can't continue any more of that kind of stuff. Like, those are untenable things. So you got that, but then you also have factions. Well, and you have factions on both sides. So in the Democrat Party, look, they have fought tooth and nail, no matter when this funding impasse has come, that you can never shut down the government for any reason. Right now, understand, you don't take a vote to shut down the government. There's no vote yes if you want to shut down, vote no if you don't want to. It's not how it goes. But you can either vote to fund it under these circumstances or not. And there's no circumstance ever for which they won't fund the government, no matter how bad it is. But in this circumstance, they now have to own the shutdown if they don't vote for this thing. And there's a lot of them that don't want to be in that camp either, right? Because they love all the programs. They love all the federal employment and all the expansive federal, involvement in your life. And so some of them are going to be in a really tough position, right? Because they're going to have to go home to their constituency and say, yeah, I voted to shut down the government. And their constituents are going to say, why? Right? They're going to have to answer that question. But you also have factions in the Republican conference. You got people like me who don't vote for CRs or omnibus. Right. And there's a whole bunch of us. And then you got kind of the establishment crowd that kind of orchestrates this stuff, right? And maybe they don't orchestrate it, but they're fine with it if we don't get our appropriations work done. This happens when you don't get your work done. We're supposed to work on 12 bills that figure out every level of spending for every different agency and pass those 12 bills. And we passed, I think, 5 or 6 of them, right? But the Senate has passed none, 0. Yeah. So you can't even put anything together because you got half an equation, but you can't get the other side. So here's where we are. Those are kind of the factions, and those are some of the dynamics. But what's different? So context is important here. And, I've kind of talked myself through this, but I've also talked my colleagues through it. Like, I came here because I thought the federal government was too big. It spent too much money. It was bankrupting our country, bankrupting our citizens. And so I'm trying to stop that, right? Well, this bill, the way it's crafted with this administration, we're actually going to cut spending, right? We actually cut spending and then we freeze it for 6 months. Well, isn't that what I came here to do? Right. It's not the way I wanted to do it, but the results are that. Well, isn't that what we came here for? So I kind of think of myself as thinking about that old saying, it's an amazing what you can do if you don't worry about who takes credit for it, right?
Yeah. So exactly. So this is sort of, we're getting a lot of our principles are getting covered here, but it is just always unpalatable to vote for a CR or an omnibus or something like that. But I want to go through what's in it. I think that's really important, and then I'll come back to what sides are angling for what. But talk to me about how this CR. First of all, I think it funds the government through the rest of the fiscal year, which is 204 days. So we're going to be back at this before you know it. I mean, that's not very long. So it's it's 6-7 months, and then we'll be back at this again. So any of you who aren't totally satisfied, you're going to get another chance to push your weight around a little bit. But let's go through, how does this differ from typical CRs in terms of content?
So the typical CR is, we know that leadership sets up the appropriations battle. They know that we're not going to come to an agreement. They don't really care. They actually like either the CR or the omnibus, because then you know who writes it? Leadership writes it. It's called a four corners deal. You got 2 in the House at the top, 2 in the Senate at the top. They meet, they decide all the spending for the whole country for the whole year. They actually like that. So they set that up. And what they tell us is, look, we couldn't get our work done, so we need to surrender today so we can fight tomorrow. That's the normal paradigm. What's different, and this is the context about this, is that, we didn't get our appropriations done, but our leadership actually wanted to do an omnibus. They wanted that four corners deal, right? The CR is not the four corners deal. They don't want the CR, but they've been forced into it by people like me and, quite honestly, the president. And the real difference is that no matter what we vote for, no matter what's in this CR right now, it continues the same policies and generally the same level of funding. But who executes that stuff? The president of the United States. And he has said, I'm not spending money on Planned Parenthood. I'm not spending money on USAID, on all the things we already identified as wasteful spending. So we finally have a partner in the presidency and in the Office of Management and Budget, which is Russ Vought and DOGE itself. We have people that aren't just talking the talk, but are literally walking the walk as we speak. I mean, the president's out there saying, let's balance the budget. So I look at this as, okay, yeah, I got to take the first step and a leap of faith here to vote for this thing, to keep the government open so that Tom Homan can keep doing his work. And the president, I'm going to take him at his word. I'm going to take these guys at their word, Russ Vought and Elon Musk, that they're going to continue the right-sizing government, getting rid of fraud, waste, and abuse. Why wouldn't I believe that? They've been doing it for the last 6 weeks. Like, why wouldn't I believe that right now?
Yeah, so I want to key on this because it seems crucial. So it doesn't have any provisions in the CR that ensures Trump doesn't spend beneath the appropriated spending, which is something that's really, the Democrats hate that stuff, right?
That's correct. Yeah. There again, like I said, it cuts certain things. It's a small cut, but in Washington, there's never been any cut.
Yeah, we never get a cut at all. This is where it's fun to be ultra principled, and I am, and I'm sure you think of yourself the same way, Congressman. But I mean, we've never had a cut at all. So like we
never had a cut at all.
Right.
So this is a cut and a freeze for 6 months. Like if you just froze spending at 6 months, it's actually a huge saving because of inflation and the normal growth of government. Like that never happened. So just on that, it's a win. But think about this too. We stopped the omnibus. Like there is not going to be an omnibus.
Yeah.
We have broken that back. And maybe that will, the last omnibus we saw will be the last one we ever see, which would be awesome. The other thing is that there are no earmarks in this thing. All those pet projects, people think, well, you know, that's a couple of $1 million or whatever. No, this is billions of dollars in earmarks that are off the table. I had a Republican member complaining to me at a meeting this morning. He's grumbling, well, I guess I got to vote for this, but, you know, my earmarks aren't in it. And I'm thinking, yeah, you're talking to the wrong guy, brother. I'm not into that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the whole. So, okay. So look, there's a lot to be encouraged here, but it's not going to be good enough for certain people, which is why Trump is working the conservatives really hard. J.D. Vance was on the Hill working conservatives. We know the Freedom Caucus is behind it, which says a lot. Did you speak to President Trump or J.D. Vance or anyone that was surprising to you to hear from on such a thing?
No, I spoke to J.D. this morning. I spoke to the vice president this morning. I sat at the table with President Trump last week, and we went through this. And quite honestly, we let him know, look, you know, if we're going to take this vote, we're counting on you to make sure that we get what we asked for. Like, I don't care how the spending cuts happens. Like, if Democrats were actually for, you know, saving our economy and not bankrupting the country, I'd work with them, but they're never for it. But I told the president and the vice president, like, if we do our part, you have to do your part. And we got the assurances that they would. And of course, like they have a track record of actually doing it right now. So there's some level of trepidation because this is the play that's always run, right? We'll surrender today so we can fight tomorrow. Again, the paradigm and the context is different. We have a president and a whole operation that is focused on reducing the size of government, getting rid of the fraud, waste, and abuse, and actually balancing the budget. I've never had that in my time in Congress. Never had that once.
So it seems like if this thing does not go through, then border security funding is not going to be there. DOGE is not going to have funding, at least temporarily.
Cut, yep.
Yeah. And we don't get those cuts locked in. So again, I don't like the CR idea, but it does feel like, what did we vote for in November if we're not going to give this a whirl right now? I mean, that's
exactly. Look, we're in a situation that started long before Kevin McCarthy. We tried, if you remember, I was one of the guys, we had McCarthy, we kind of had leveraged him for his speakership to make an agreement to pass the bills. So we weren't in this situation. He betrayed us. He's no longer the speaker, but this is a consequence of his actions over the long term, and we're trying to work our way back. I see this as a first down. If you use a football metaphor, this is a first down so that we can get to the real play, which is reconciliation. And and if they help us on this and do the right thing, but then abandon us on reconciliation, we're going to walk off the field. Like, we're not done. We cannot allow them to bankrupt our country. So we're just saying, look, we're going to help you here as long as you do the right thing. But if you think you're going to abandon us later, we won't be with you.
Okay, so one thing that was pretty remarkable that happened today was that House Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris joined the weekly leadership press conference, which apparently this doesn't happen a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is this something that could happen consistently, or does it just kind of mark how essential this is to, I think, the Trump America First agenda?
It shows how essential it is, but it does show a new kind of unification of the Republican Party. And it also shows everybody we're at the table and we're being constructive, because so many times people say, you Freedom Caucus guys, you don't produce anything. All you do is cause trouble. No, we're pushing with the levers that we have to try and save our country. And just as by way of example, you need to know this. So we, had a general agreement about what the CR would be and that we could support it. And then last night we found out they raised the cap on Afghan refugees coming to the United States and put it in the CR. And we said, well, hold on a second. We didn't agree to that. If you're putting that in, we're out. So you know what they did? They took it out.
Yeah, this is something that is just so noteworthy, because it does, especially for my audience in particular, is that as editor of Breitbart, I would like to think of myself as the most principled guy in town, but I'm not going to cut my nose off to spite my face, which it feels like some people want to do that here, and it feels like too much. I wouldn't dwell on it too much, but the only no so far on the Republican side in the House is Thomas Massie. It sounds like Rand Paul is going to be a no on the Senate side. But the Senate, you could see some Democrats who are in swing states might end up supporting it. Talk to me about any of the surprising people who might not be voting the way you would anticipate. And do you feel like that there's a lot of undecided still out there that could end up derailing this thing?
I don't think there's a lot of undecideds, but I do think that there are people that are taking advantage of the situation. They want something. They haven't been getting a lot of attention for whatever legislative thing or whatever they want. And so they're saying, look, I don't know if I'm going to vote for this. Then leadership has to go to them. The president calls them. What do you want? What's it going to take? And then they have an opportunity to say, I want my bill. I want this program or whatever. I wish that weren't the case, but that's politics. I think you might be also surprised. I think Rand might vote for it at the end of the day. He might not. I doubt Thomas will. And I'm okay with that. But there might be some Democrats in the House that vote for it. And I think that it's going to be very difficult for Democrats in the Senate to not vote for it. Again, they're the ones that there's no price at all that they won't pay to keep the government open forever. And now they're going to have to go out and say, I shut the government. I voted, essentially no. So the government shut down, and their constituents will say, well, why did you do that? Well, I did that because I hate Trump. I did that because I didn't want Elon Musk finding more fraud, waste, and abuse. Like, what's the answer to that? I think it's going to be very difficult for them. So I'm actually hopeful this would be the first time that this happened as well, that we vote on this today, we pass it, and then we leave town and leave the Senate holding the hot potato like they always do to us.
Yeah, so could be a new environment now, but with the conservatives now all of a sudden dominating the culture wars, which we never have. I'm a 20-year-long culture warrior. We've never actually been ahead in this. If you want to use a football analogy, we've never been winning this game.
No, you're right. We never have been. And I will tell you, if it weren't for the Freedom Caucus members and the conservative movement in general, your audience, people like you yourself, we would be having an omnibus right now. Like this is a huge victory for us. Just think about it. We're cutting and freezing spending. We're giving money to home, and we stopped the omnibus. There are no earmarks in it. Look, this is the best crap sandwich you could ever get.
So, but what's noteworthy is that normally in the past, we would certainly get blamed for government shutdown. I mean, recall the famous government shutdown where Trump wanted $5 billion for the border wall, $5 billion. And we shut the whole government down and Republicans were blamed. We voted for Trump to build a wall and he couldn't get $5 billion. And then Republicans were all blamed for it.
Right.
When that happened. Do you think that'd be the case now? Do you think if there was a shutdown that it'd be seen as Republicans' fault?
I think it depends on how it goes, but generally because the mainstream media just automatically blames Republicans because they think we want to shut the government down. That's what we want to do. We actually don't want to, but we have few tools here to make sure the right thing happens. And both sides, both Republicans and Democrats, team up to bankrupt our country and bankrupt our citizens. And the only one that ever stands up, there's no Democrats that stand up against that. It's only, a handful of conservatives in the House. So it's easy just to blame us. And they always do.
Yeah, Thomas Massie's not here to speak for himself. I mean, I'd like to talk to him, but I assume he's in hot demand right now. I don't know how much he wants to talk. But, well, what is the principle that he thinks is being violated here by the CR? Because, again, not perfect, but this is the best looking CR I've seen.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think generally his principle is this, look, as long as we keep allowing them to do CRs, they will have no incentive to go through the appropriations process. That. I don't disagree with him, but let's get into reality. The appropriations process where the House passes 12 bills, the Senate passes 12 bills, they conference them, we send it to the president for a signature. That hasn't happened since 1996. 1996. Like, when are we thinking this is like magically coming back? We got to find a new way to do business around here.
Yeah. And I was surprised it's that recent because it certainly hasn't been since I've been old enough to pay attention.
Right.
Congressman, your district is kind of a toss-up district. You had a tough race last time. How does that affect you in these tight debates where it's really a high-stakes, high-wire act? I would want to know your approach just politically to message to your district on these things.
Here's my approach to messaging and to my votes and to how I comport myself. I try and do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons every time. And the rest of it's just going to have to work itself out. I'm honest with my constituents. They're my bosses. I explain myself, my rationale, why I vote this way or not that way. And I got to let the chips fall where they may, right? I just got to do the right thing. I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and that doesn't include bankrupting my country or my constituents. So, if the Republicans are doing dumb things, I'm voting against it. If the Democrats are doing dumb things, I'm voting against it, and vice versa. I just do what I think is the right thing, and I go home and tell my constituents that. And so far, they have rewarded me with sending me back here to be their representative, and so it's worked for me. All you can do is be honest with yourself, be sincere, and be honest with your bosses. That's all you can do.
Yeah, I hope that works.
These are perfect choices.
Yeah, I hope that works because it'd be nice if we could at least hear from people we disagree with and not just get grandstanding. Right. Congressman, let's say this gets through, it passes tonight, even conceivably. Then what's next up? What's next on the agenda?
The next on the agenda is immediately getting to reconciliation. The House passed a framework. The Senate's talked about stuff, but they haven't passed anything. We got to put the meat on the bones there and start driving the cost of government down, right? The president says he wants to balance the budget. It's not going to happen in 1 year, but we got to get on the path to that. And it means making some hard choices, but they actually shouldn't be hard. Like if you're here illegally and getting Medicaid or Medicare, I don't know why Republicans have a problem saying no to you. You're not here legally. You don't belong in those programs. So let's get after things like that. We don't have to rely on Elon Musk to do all the work. It's our job to do it. And let's codify the things that this president has done on the spending side, but also on the executive order side, on regulations and things like that. They are good things, but, we don't want them to fade away after the Trump presidency. So we need to work on the reconciliation to make sure that Tom Homan has all the money he needs on modernizing the military, but then on paring back our obscene spending so that interest rates can come down and so that the price of everything else can come down with it. And then finally, codifying what the president has done at the executive level through the legislative branch so that it is law and we don't have to, see us all reversed in 4 years when it's not President Trump. That should be our vision. That should be our effort. And that's what we should be able to run on in a year and a half from now.
Beautiful. Congressman Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, thanks for all the information, your generosity with your time today.
Thank you. Have a great day. God bless you.
Thank you. That's today's show. Thanks to Misty for her tireless work as our producer, and all of you who subscribe to the Breitbart Fight Club. I got a great interview about South Africa and their rampant racism with Joel Pollack today, so check that out over there. And telling 10,000 friends and family members. I noticed a bunch of new reviews come in on Apple. That's very helpful to me. Anytime you're inclined to subscribe, review, recommend, helps me a lot. Thanks for doing that. Also, check out the sponsors. They're all terrific, or I wouldn't do business with them. I promise you that. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for listening or watching.